Okay, so as we said before, we're gonna take this, take the cables off of this, and we're going to then add a connector so it can plug onto the end of the male XT60. So we're going to add a female one onto this end. And this is interesting. Okay, so we are currently opening up a professional battery pack, and what we are seeing here is, look and behold, return of the masking tape. So this is one that's actually been made at the factory. If it'll focus in, there we go. Made at the factory, and it's got one single layer of shrink wrap, and then all it's got is a bit of masking tape over the actual exposed terminals. So this is what I was talking about. This battery pack over here, the cells are all individually insulated, then they're all individually secured together with hot glue, then they've got insulation rings put on them, then they've got their joining metal straps to connect them all up. Then on top of that, they've got another insulation layer. Then they're completely bound up with sort of fire retardant tape. And then I've gone in, hot glued it all together, not excessively, just enough to tag it together. Then we've gone in with electrical tape, and then the layers of shrink wrap. And then obviously after this it's actually going to be put into a case like this was, I suppose. But you can see just how many extra steps of insulation and protection that's got. I mean, even these connectors here, they don't have any heat shrink on them. This has all got heavy duty heat shrink on. Alright, so I'm just going to peel this back a little bit further, and we should be able to get in and get these cables straight off the terminals. And yeah, they've just soldered them straight onto the cells. That's not ideal really, but so yeah, let's put that back on. We'll desolder them. May as well. If we desolder them, that'll save us having to strip the ends and tin them and stuff like that. You know what though? That is actually really iffy. Right, so I'm going to bring this over to the second cam. This protection ring which they've added in here, this little white bit, it's just like a little plastic washer that they've put over. You can see it slightly clearer on this one here. That's absolutely fine. That's been tagged together using spot welding. This, however, the heat has actually compromised it, and this tag is just getting ready to touch the negative. So again, straight out of the factory, that is absolutely shocking, really, especially given the fact that if you buy one of these battery packs online, you know, brand new, you're probably going to end up paying about 100 quid for it. So yeah, not great quality control. I mean, had the person soldering it done a better job, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the construction of this pack. It just so happens that this particular pack has been thrown together by an ape. So yeah, we're going to come in and desolder this anyway. Should have enough temperature by now. Crank it up a bit. Yeah, I'm just going to cut that. I'm not liking how much heat I'm having to put into that. I think we're going to fireman Sam it as well. A bit of the old freezer spray. Right, so yeah, we're just going to Just going to cut these cables off because it's not actually liking desoldering. What I mean by that is just the process is these joints are too hard, and the process of heating it up is actually aggravating the cells. Right, so that's them off. Just do a little ring around these as well to get the insulation off. Don't want to use too much pressure. Again, use a wire stripper. Don't do this. So you can end up cutting yourself quite easily. One thing about doing this sort of thing all the time is you do end up building up quite a thick layer of skin on your hands, so you can get away with being a little bit more relaxed around blades and stuff. I mean, it doesn't mean you're completely knife proof or anything, but you know, you do have some slight resistance to it. Right, we're going to tin these ends now. We've exposed them. So clean the tip, little dab of solder, and there we go. Little dab of solder is just to lively up the end of the iron, and if you've got wet solder on there already, not much, just a tiny bit, it actually helps conduct the heat into the actual wiring. So yeah, I'll just thin that out a bit actually, because there's a bit of a blob on there. But it's all good because it's going to get blobbified in a bit once it goes into the connectors. So let's get that out of the way. So my parts bin thingy-be-doo-dids. So yeah, we got one of the male XT60. These are actually quite high quality, expensive connectors as far as XT60s go. Because again, they had to be pretty high quality for use on the robot. Originally purchased for serious business. Just make sure you've got you know, you've got your polarity correct as well before you do this. So the back square section on this is positive, so I'm going to be soldering the red wire onto this. But first, I'm going to jump off and get some heat shrink. Hey, did you miss me? Right, so just grabbed a couple of pre-cut bits. Another tip as well, if you're doing multiples of things like this, for maintenance on the robot again in particular, I made a load of pre-cut sort of 20mm pieces of heat shrink, and you can see how narrow this goes down to. I think what was it, like 200% reduction or something like that, 150% reduction. So yeah, it really does shrink right down. Most standard heat shrink doesn't actually shrink that much, it only shrinks a little bit, whereas this really gives you a lot of leeway. So obviously slide this over before you do your solderings. So that's in place, and this particular heat shrink has actually got the glue in, like I said before. So this will actually bond the wires and stuff as well once it's shrunk down. Also adds an extra seal around the edge, which you'll probably see in a bit. I might use the heat of the iron just underneath it to shrink them, but keep them out the way at the moment, because as the heat travels down the wire, you will activate the glue in these and it'll cause it to stick. If you are using normal heat shrink, if you're doing anything like this, what you may find is that the heat shrink just starts closing up. If it does that, you might not be able to slide it up the wire and get it over your solder joint. So again, just keep it as far out the way as you can. If you've got some helping hands, like the crocodile clip things, or a spare pair of pliers, not sharp, just flat-ended pliers, if you place that onto the cable, it acts as a heat sink or a heat shunt. So as the heat travels down, when it hits the point where it's being gripped by the pliers, it'll start putting the heat into the pliers, and it won't stop the heat going all the way up the cable, but it'll significantly slow it down. So you can use that as a little handy tip if you're struggling to well, just protect your heat shrink from shriveling. So yeah, let's just shape that a bit. Let's put that back in that one. Right, okay. So that one wants to go in there. Just use a little bit of blue tack. Doesn't have to be pretty. Right. So one handy tip for working on these is if you plug in a another connector into the end, if you do happen to accidentally overheat the connector, what happens is these pins inside, they'll start to sway side to side, and if they do that, you won't be able to get your male connector into the female. So if you just plug in a spare male connector, not only does it act as a heat sink to help the heat travel along, but you will actually hold your pins in place, which is always a good thing. I've slapped a little bit of solder onto the end of this already, just as a little bit of a prime, if you like. Yeah, you know what, let's take a little bit more insulation off as well, because we can get those cables in a little bit further, can't we? So don't have to be as conservative with the insulation there. It's always best as well to err on the side of caution, because you can always take more insulation off, but you can't add insulation as well. Right, here we go. That's nice. Yeah, that's a good sound. You'll get like a little sizzle sound come off of the connector. You don't want it sort of hissing and cracking and stuff, because that's basically you melting and burning the plastic. But yeah, you just want a little sort of sizzly bubble, because there's they're recessed. They've got like a sort of like a tube, if you like. So as the solder heats up and bubbles inside, it tends to make a little bit of a sort of hissing, bubbly sound. Just going to heat that up again just to reflow it. Just with a little bit more solder. And we've got a fairly good joint there, but I just want to make sure whilst not overheating it. Yeah, that's good. Alright, flip that over. What I'm going to do with this one actually is just going to add a little bit of flux, because I did have to reflow that other one. So flux is pretty certain it's like a an oil with an acid, and what it does is when it heats up, it kind of flows over the surface, and the acid kind of etches off any oxidization on both the surfaces, whilst also giving it a slightly pitted finish. I mean, you're talking on the sort of micro scale, and yeah, that probably is a big meaty piece of flux there, but yeah, shouldn't matter. It's gonna be irate. Alright, let's use this to add some back pressure to that there. Come on, stop being so reluctant. There we go. I mean, I will use my helping hands and stuff hopefully in upcoming videos, but this does the job for now. Plus, you know, I like to do things a little bit harder than need be, because I do try and show people how they can do things at home without all the fangled tools. Yeah, flux is going nuts at the moment, bubbling away. But yeah, it's looking good. Lovely jubbly. Just let that cool down a bit. But yeah, we've got a nice joint on that as well, and we'll be able to bring that insulation up. And it's a good idea while it's all still a bit hot, but obviously don't burn your hands. But if you slide these up while it is still hot, you can actually start the shrinking process using some of the residual heat, which helps. We should have enough heat in this iron to shrink these, but if not, I might pop off and... Ah, no. We are good. There's definitely enough heat in this to do this, so... I'm not actually touching the insulation either, the heat shrink. I'm letting the heat just rise up off the tip. You'll be surprised how fast you'll age a soldering iron if you... like a soldering iron tip anyway, if you keep using it for things like melting hot glue, touching insulation, touching plastic, you know, it's just, it's not a good recipe. You're also breathing all that in as well if you haven't got an extractor, so it's just best you don't. Always look after your tools, always look after yourself. Something quite satisfying about watching it shrink as well. It does take a little bit longer than a hot air gun, but you know. So yeah, just to get the central bits there, if you hold the iron vertical, you're getting all the heat of the iron rising up. And if you saw what I was doing before, I was holding the iron above it. If the heat is a little bit too much for the shrink wrap, you can always use the heat from underneath the tip. It's a lot cooler than above. Obviously, heat rises and all that, basic science. So yeah, while this is still quite hot, especially with it having the glue in it as well, this is a time you can sort of manipulate it all into position if you need to. But I like to give it a little bit of a squeeze while it's in this state as well, because that helps the like what I'm doing is I'm squeezing the glue from the top sort of down, if you like, towards the actual joint. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We've got one solid connection there now, and because of how thick this this heat shrink is, it's going to add some cable bend protection to the joint as well. We can take our spare connector out there, and look at that, lovely jubbly, we got a perfect connection there. Okay, I've got some light on the situation now. There we go. Right, so yep, so that'll plug into here like a glove, and we can see we've got red to red, black to black, and that's now ready to plug into the device. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump off, and I'm going to test the pack on the actual device. Switch this off. Never leave a soldering iron on and unattended. Yeah, so just going to give this a quick test. We'll be back in a second. Yeah, so this is the Strimmer, and as you can see, it works. And what we've done is we've just simply hooked it up, connected up like this. So next part of what we're going to do is we're going to build up the battery pack so it can just slot on and lock into place like it used to, just as a block goes like that. Yeah, and that should be this ready to be used again.